I didn't lose my mind at 71. I lost my family story. That's the only sentence I can say without my voice shaking, because the moment I say anything else, it becomes real. I'm Linda Harper. I'm 71 years old. I've lived long enough to bury people I loved, watch my children become adults, and learn that time smooths out most pain. I believed, truly believed, that whatever surprises life had left for me would be small: an unexpected medical bill, a leaky roof, maybe a grandkid deciding they hated college after one semester. Not this. Not the kind of surprise that makes you stare at your own last name like it belongs to a stranger. It started as something sweet, almost ordinary. My granddaughter wanted to do one of those at-home DNA kits, part curiosity, part family tree project for school. She said it would be fun, that we could trace where the Harpers came from, maybe find some relatives, maybe learn why my hair went silver early and why my brother Robert's was still dark at 50. I laughed and told her, "Honey, our family is as American as it gets. Sunday dinners, hand-me-down stories, and a photo album full of faces I can name without thinking." But I did it anyway. Because when you're 71, you don't say no to anything that makes your grandchild light up. I swabbed my cheek at the kitchen table, sealed it up, and mailed it off like I was sending a postcard. I forgot about it for weeks. Then one morning, I woke up early, old habit, made coffee, and checked my email while the house was quiet. There it was. "Your results are ready." I remember smiling, just a little, like I was about to open a present. I clicked, logged in, and stared at a colorful dashboard that promised to tell me who I was. The ancestry breakdown was interesting, sure, but it wasn't the first thing that grabbed me. It was the matches. A list of names, percentages, and bold labels. First cousins, second cousins, people I'd never heard of. And then one match, sitting there like a brick in the middle of the screen. Robert Harper, parent/child. Parent. Child. My brain tried to translate it into something normal. My brother Robert. My big brother. The man who taught me how to ride a bike on our gravel driveway, jogging beside me until I could balance. The man who used to sneak me extra marshmallows when mom wasn't looking. The man who showed up at my wedding with his tie crooked and his eyes watery, acting tough like he always did. Parent/child. I clicked it again, like maybe the words would change if I looked harder. I refreshed the page. I logged out and back in. I held my breath the way you do when you're waiting for a mistake to fix itself. But the label stayed. Then I noticed another line, shared DNA. Enough to mean only one thing. I felt the heat rise in my face. My hands went cold, coffee suddenly bitter in my mouth. I told myself it was an error, a glitch. Maybe Robert had used my name by accident. Maybe the database mixed up profiles. Maybe I clicked the wrong match. I'm not reckless. I'm the kind of person who keeps a folder for warranties and writes birthdays on a wall calendar. So I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I tried to prove it wrong. I ordered a second kit from a different company. I didn't tell anyone. Not my kids, not my granddaughter, not Robert. I just did it. Quietly. Like if I handled it carefully, it would stay manageable. The second time, I took the sample in the bathroom mirror, staring at my own eyes and thinking, "You're being ridiculous, Linda. You're letting the internet scare you." I mailed it off and waited, pretending I wasn't waiting. But I was. Every day, every time the mail truck passed, every time my phone buzzed, I felt something tighten in my chest. When the second results arrived, I sat down before I opened them, like my body already knew it needed bracing. And there it was again. Different website, different design, same conclusion. Robert Harper, biological parent. In that moment, it wasn't just confusion. It was collapse. Because if my brother was my father, then the man I grew up calling Dad, what was he? And my mother, God rest her soul, what did she take to her grave? The walls of my kitchen looked the same. The morning light came through the window the same, but nothing else did. I heard Robert's laugh in my memory, felt the weight of his arm around my shoulder at funerals, remembered every time he said, "Kiddo, don't worry about it." And suddenly I wondered if "don't worry about it" had always been a shield. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I whispered out loud, to an empty house, as if saying it would make it clearer, "My brother can't be my father." But the numbers didn't care what I believed. They just sat there, quiet and exact, waiting for me to do what I'd never had to do in 71 years, question everything. The rest of that morning moved like I was underwater. I shut the laptop, then opened it again, as if I could bargain with the screen. I walked to the sink, rinsed the coffee mug I had not finished, and stared at my own reflection in the window glass. 71 years old, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on my head, the same face I had seen every day of my life. But something in me kept asking, whose face is that, really? I did not call anyone. Not yet. I needed one thing first, to be absolutely certain that I was not misunderstanding what those companies were telling me. So I did what any sensible person does when panic tries to hijack the brain. I started making lists. I wrote down the facts in my old spiral notebook, the one I usually used for grocery reminders and grandkid schedules. Fact 1. 2 separate DNA tests matched me to Robert Harper as a biological parent. Fact 2. Robert was my brother, born in 1950, and I was born in 1954. For years apart. Fact 3. Our mother was Evelyn Harper, and the man I called Dad was Charles Harper. I wrote their names like they were pieces on a chessboard, then sat there with the pen hovering, waiting for reality to explain itself. It did not. So I went hunting for paper, the kind people used to trust before everything turned into passwords and logins. I pulled a worn cardboard box from the hall closet, the one labeled Linda Important, in my own handwriting. Inside were old insurance cards, a stack of tax returns, my marriage certificate, and folded into a plastic sleeve, my birth certificate. I had not looked at it in years. The paper smelled faintly like dust and time. I smoothed it on the kitchen table and ran my finger over the typed lines. Name, Linda Marie. Harper. Date of birth, May 1954. Place of birth, a small hospital outside Columbus, Ohio. Mother, Evelyn Harper. Father, Charles Harper. It was all there in clean black ink, neat as a promise. And yet I could not stop thinking about what the DNA said, because the DNA did not care about ink. The DNA did not care about the story we agreed to live in. I flipped the certificate over, hoping for a note, a stamp, anything unusual. Nothing. So I went deeper. I found a yellowed baptism record from our church, the one Mom never missed on Sundays. Same parents listed. I found a baby book with my name on the cover, a few pages filled in with Mom's careful cursive. First smile. First steps. First tooth. There was even a note. Charles cried when Linda came home. I sat with that line a long time, because it sounded like my father, the man who whistled while fixing things and called every waitress ma'am, and believed you should always have at least half a tank of gas. He had been real to me. He had loved me. That love was not suddenly fake just because a genetic test hit like a lightning bolt. But love and biology are different things, and I could feel my mind trying to hold both without breaking. By noon I had gathered enough paperwork to cover half the table, and none of it solved the one question that mattered. How could Robert be my biological parent? My heart kept trying to invent explanations that sounded reasonable. Maybe Robert was not really my brother. Maybe he had been adopted and no one told me. Maybe I had been adopted and no one told me. Maybe we were half-siblings in a way that would make the match look strange. Maybe there was a lab mix-up in both companies, though that sounded less and less believable. I logged back into the first site and stared at the match details, then the second site, then back again. The numbers were not close. They were not in a gray zone. They were a blunt statement written in percentages instead of words. I tried to imagine telling my son, telling my daughter, telling my granddaughter who thought this was a fun project. The thought made my stomach twist. I set the notebook aside and did the next. Most careful thing I could think of, I looked at old photographs with new eyes. I pulled out an album and opened it to pictures from our childhood. There was Robert at 16, tall and broad-shouldered, standing beside Mom at the county fair. There was me at 5, missing a front tooth, sitting on Dad's lap. I stared at my own face and then at Robert's. I had always assumed any resemblance was normal, the way family resemblance works. But now my brain started circling details like a detective who cannot stop. My nose, his jawline, the shape of our ears. It felt disloyal, like I was accusing my own blood of something without evidence, even though the evidence was staring at me from a screen. Then one memory surfaced, small and sharp, something I had never filed away as important until that moment. I was maybe 9 or 10. I had asked Mom why Robert was so protective of me, why he got so angry when boys teased me at school. Mom had smiled tightly and said, "He just loves you so much, Linda. He always has." Back then, that answer had felt comforting. Now it felt like a door that had been locked on purpose. Another memory followed. A family picnic. I overheard my Aunt Margaret say something to Mom in a hissed voice, too quiet for a child to hear clearly, except I did hear one phrase. "You promised we would take it to the grave." Mom saw me and changed the subject so fast it made my head spin. I had forgotten that moment for decades. But sitting in my kitchen with DNA results open and papers spread out like evidence, I remembered it perfectly. I looked at the clock and realized I had been holding my breath on and off all day. I forced myself to inhale, slow and deep, and I made a decision that scared me more than the results themselves. Before I spoke to Robert, before I spoke to my children, I needed one more confirmation. Not a company, not a website, a person, someone else who shared blood with me, someone who could not be explained away by paperwork, someone who would tell me the truth without meaning to. And in our family, there was only one person left who might have known everything from the beginning and still be alive. To talk about it, my Aunt Margaret, my mother's older sister, 87 years old, sharp as a tack, and famous for saying, "Do not ask questions you are not ready to hear answered." By late afternoon, the sun had shifted and the kitchen felt too quiet for what was happening inside my head. I stood at the counter with my phone in my hand, staring at my Aunt Margaret's contact photo, a picture taken at my grandson's graduation where she looked tiny but unstoppable in a bright blue cardigan. My thumb hovered over the call button like it weighed 10 pounds. I could have convinced myself to wait until morning, to be polite, to not bother an 87-year-old with drama. But the truth is, when you are 71 and something this big cracks open, you stop worrying about polite. You worry about time. I pressed call. It rang 3 times before she answered, her voice clear and brisk, like she had been expecting me for years. "Linda," she said, "no hello, just my name." It landed heavy. "Aunt Margaret." I replied, trying to sound normal, trying to sound like I had not spent the day turning my life into evidence. "Are you busy?" "I am folding laundry," she said. "That means I am never too busy for family." "What is wrong?" I swallowed. Even through the phone, she could hear it. That was Margaret. She could always hear what people were trying not to say. "I did one of those DNA tests," I said, forcing the words out slowly, like if I said them carefully enough they would not explode. There was a brief silence, the soft rustle of fabric, then nothing. "And?" she asked, but her voice had changed. It was still steady, but softer, like she had stepped into a different room inside herself. "And it says Robert is my biological parent," I said. I expected her to laugh, to dismiss it, to say those websites are nonsense. I expected anything except what came next. She did not laugh. She did not even ask what company. She only exhaled once, long and thin, like she had been holding her breath for decades and finally let go. "You should not have done that," she said quietly. My knees went weak. I slid into a chair. "So you know?" I whispered. "You knew?" "Linda," she said, and it sounded like a warning and an apology at the same time. "You asked a question you were not ready to have answered." "I am ready now," I lied. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Tell me the truth. Tell me right now." Another pause, and I could hear her set something down, like she had decided laundry could wait because the past had arrived. "Before I say anything," she began, "you need to promise me something." "What?" "You need to promise me you will not call Robert until you have listened to the whole story," she said. "Because if you go at him with half the truth, you will blow up what is left of your peace, and you will not be able to put it back together." I closed my eyes. Robert, my brother, the man who still called me every Sunday evening, the man who brought me soup when I had the flu last winter, the man who always ended calls with, "All right, kiddo, you take care." My voice cracked. "I promise," I said. "Good," she replied. "Now listen carefully." I could hear the old house sounds on her end, a clock ticking, maybe a television faint in the background, the ordinary life that had somehow held an extraordinary secret. "Your mother was 16 when Robert was born," Margaret said. "Do you remember her telling you she was 19? "Yes," I said, confused. "She always said she was 19. "That was one of the lies," Margaret said. "Evelyn was younger than she wanted anyone to know. Back then, people counted years like they counted sins. If a girl had a baby too young, the whole town would decide she was ruined. Your grandmother, God love her, was terrified of that." My mouth went dry. "So Robert," I started. "Robert was born at home," Margaret continued, quietly. "No announcements. No baby shower. Just family and fear and a lot of prayers that no one would ask questions. My stomach turned. But Robert was always treated like my brother, I insisted. He was always there. He grew up with us. He grew up with you, Margaret said, emphasis sharp, because he had to. The story your family chose was the only way they knew how to survive their world. I squeezed the phone so tight my fingers hurt. Aunt Margaret, you are not saying what I think you are saying, I whispered. She did not hesitate. Linda, she said, Robert is your mother's son. That part was true. He was raised as your brother, and he loved you like a brother should. Her voice lowered. But when you were born, the world would not have accepted the truth, and your mother would not have survived it emotionally. Charles stepped in. He put his name on your papers. He made you his daughter in every way that counted in daily life. So Charles was not my biological father, I said, the words tasting bitter. No, she said, but he was your father. Do you understand me? He chose you. He loved you. He did not have to, but he did. Tears burned behind my eyes. Then how? I demanded. How does the DNA say Robert is my parent? Margaret's voice went so quiet I had to press the phone closer. Because, she said, your mother did not make you with Charles. My breath caught. My mind flashed through 1,000 impossible images and rejected all of them. Aunt Margaret, I said, shaking, say it plainly. She held the line in silence for a heartbeat, as if giving me one last chance to stop. Then she spoke, careful and direct, without graphic detail, but with enough clarity to change my life forever. Linda, she said, you were conceived when your mother was still a teenager and Robert was older than her. It was wrong, and it was buried, and everyone decided silence was the least cruel option. They raised you inside a different story to protect you from what they could not bear to face. The room around me blurred. My voice came out as a broken whisper. So my brother, I began, is the reason your DNA says what it says, Margaret finished. And I am sorry. I am so sorry you had to find out from a website instead of from someone who could have held your hand. The phone felt hot against my ear, like it had been plugged into the wall. For a few seconds I could not speak, not because I did not have words, but because every word I knew suddenly belonged to someone else. Brother, father, mother, daughter. They used to fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Now they cut like glass. I stared at the pile of documents on my kitchen table, the birth certificate, the baby book, the smiling photos, and I realized paper can be honest and still be incomplete. Aunt Margaret, I finally managed, my voice thin. Are you telling me my whole life is a cover story? I am telling you your family built a story because they thought it would keep you safe, she said. It did not keep you safe from the truth forever. It only delayed it. I pressed my free hand to my chest, trying to slow the pounding there. Why would no one tell me? I asked. Not even when I became an adult. Not when Mom got sick. Not when Dad died. Not once. Margaret sighed, and I could hear something like regret move through her breath. Because secrets do not stay secrets, she said. They become habits. And habits become a kind of prison. Your mother learned to live inside that prison until it felt normal. The mention of my mother's choices made my anger flare, quick and sharp. So everyone just agreed to pretend, I said. They all looked at me, and they smiled, and they let me call him my brother. Linda, she replied, firmer now, listen to me. Robert did not raise you as his child. Charles did. Your mother did. Robert was your brother in how he treated you day to day. That part was real. But yes, the origin was not what you were told. My throat tightened. Did Robert know? I whispered. Of course he knew, Margaret said. He lived with it. Every day. That answer hit me in a strange way. It did not make me hate him immediately. It made me imagine him carrying something heavy for decades and never setting it down. Then another thought broke through, colder than the rest. If what you are saying is true, I said, forcing each word to come out steady, then what happened back then was not something to be brushed aside. It was wrong. It was wrong. Margaret agreed instantly. No hesitation, no softening. And your mother was young and frightened and trapped by a world that blamed girls for everything. Your grandmother was terrified. Charles was trying to do what he thought was honorable. No one handled it the way a healthy family should. That is the honest truth. I sat very still, because when someone finally says a thing out loud, your body reacts like it has been waiting years to collapse. So Dad, I said, and the word tasted like grief. Charles put his name on my papers knowing I was not his biologically. Yes, Margaret said. He chose you anyway. Tears slid down my face, and I did not wipe them. I let them fall onto the notebook like punctuation. Charles Harper had been my father in every memory that mattered. He taught me to drive in the high school parking lot. He gave me away at my wedding. He held my babies. He stood behind me at my mother's funeral with his hand on my shoulder, steady as a fence post. And now I had to accept that love and biology had been living side by side without my consent. What about Mom? I asked, my voice breaking again. Did she ever want to tell me? Margaret paused, and for the first time she sounded her age. Yes, she said. More than once. But every time she tried, fear grabbed her by the throat. She worried you would hate her. She worried you would hate Robert. She worried you would hate yourself. And then time kept moving, and the longer she waited, the more impossible it felt. I squeezed my eyes shut. I do not even know what I feel, I admitted. I feel sick. I feel furious. And I feel stupid for not seeing anything. You were not stupid, Margaret said sharply. You were a child. You were a daughter. You believed the people you loved. That is not stupidity. That is normal. I took a shaky breath. Tell me one thing, I said. Did anyone else know besides you and Mom and Robert and Charles? Your grandmother knew, Margaret answered. A couple of older relatives suspected, but most people did not know the full truth. They only knew your mother did not like questions, and that Robert was overly protective. They filled in the blanks with whatever was easiest to believe. My mind went back to childhood again, to the moments I had shrugged off. The way Mom snapped if I asked about her teen years. The way Robert always seemed to arrive at my house too quickly whenever I was upset, like he had been waiting. The way family gatherings sometimes felt like everyone was performing, smiling too brightly. What am I supposed to do now? I asked, and for the first time since morning I sounded like myself, not just shock. I promised you I would not call Robert until I heard everything. I heard it. So what do I do? Margaret's voice softened. You do not do anything tonight, she said. You eat something. You drink water. You sleep if you can. And tomorrow, you decide what you want, not what anyone else wants. Do you want answers from Robert? Do you want to speak to a counselor? Do you want to tell your children? Those are your choices now. I stared at the clock. It was past dinner time, and my stomach felt hollow, but the idea of food seemed impossible. I keep hearing his voice, I said, barely above a whisper. Kiddo, do not worry about it. Margaret did not respond right away. When she did, her words were careful, like she was placing something fragile on a table. He loved you, she said, and he also lived with what happened. Both can be true, but you deserve to hear it from him, not from me, not from a test, not from rumors. When you are ready, you call him, and you ask him to tell you the truth. And Linda, she added, when you do, remember you are not guilty of what happened. You are the one who was kept in the dark. You are the one who gets to step into the light. I hung up the phone and sat there alone, the house quiet again, but different now. The truth had a sound, even in silence. And in that silence, I realized the next call I made could either shatter what was left of my family or finally make sense of a lifetime that no longer fit. That night, I did exactly what Aunt Margaret told me not to do. I tried to sleep and failed. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, listening to its soft clicking like it was counting down to something. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Robert's name on that screen with that impossible label beside it. Parent. Child. Two words that did not belong together in my life. Around 2 in the morning I got up, padded into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water I did not drink. I opened the photo album again and found myself stuck on one picture in particular. Robert holding me when I was a baby, his teenage face serious, his arms too careful, like he was afraid I might break. I had always thought it was sweet. Now it looked like a photograph trying to tell the truth without anyone noticing. When morning finally came, it did not feel like a new day. It felt like the same day continuing with harsher lighting. I made toast, took one bite, and set the plate down. My hands would not stop trembling. I walked from room to room like I was searching for something I had dropped, but what I wanted was not in any drawer or closet. It was in another person's mouth. The truth. By 9 o'clock I sat at the kitchen table again. The same chair, the same table that had held birthday cakes and homework and Thanksgiving place settings. I placed my phone in front of me like a witness. Robert's number was already there in my recent calls because he had called me the Sunday before, like he always did, and I had answered like everything was normal because I did not know. My thumb hovered over his name. Aunt Margaret had said I deserved to hear it from him. But what she did not say was how hard it is to call someone you love and invite your whole life to collapse in real time. I took a breath, then another, then pressed call. It rang once, twice, and on the third ring his voice filled my ear, warm and familiar. "Hey, kiddo," he said, cheerful, like he was standing in my doorway with a bag of groceries. "You calling early? Everything all right?" I almost said yes. That is how trained I was to protect the story. But the story had already broken. "Robert," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "I need you to stay on the line and listen. Please." The cheer drained from him instantly. "Linda," he said, cautious now, "you are scaring me." "I am scared," I admitted. "I did a DNA test. Actually, I did too. And both of them say the same thing." There was a pause so long I thought the call had dropped, but I could still hear him breathing. "What thing?" he asked, slow, like he already knew, but needed me to say it. My throat tightened. "They say you are my biological parent," I said. I expected denial. I expected anger. I expected him to call the tests ridiculous. Instead, I heard something I had never heard from Robert Harper in my entire life. Silence that sounded like surrender. Then, very quietly, he said, "Oh, Linda." 2 words, and my stomach turned because they did not sound confused. They sounded like grief. "So it is true," I whispered. My eyes filled again. "It is true." He did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was rough, like he had swallowed something sharp. "I do not know what those tests are saying exactly," he began, and I could hear him trying to build a wall with words. "But I know what you are asking." "Do not," I said, shaking, "do not dance around it. Aunt Margaret told me. She said I should hear everything from you, not from her. So I am asking you, Robert. I am asking you straight. Why would my DNA say that about you?" Another long silence. Then he exhaled, and it sounded like a man stepping off a ledge he had been clinging to for 70 years. "Because," he said, "your mother and I were both kids, and the adults in charge made choices that were supposed to fix things." My chest tightened. "Made choices," I repeated. "That is a polite way to say it." "I know," he replied, and his voice cracked on the last word. "I know." My mind wanted to turn him into a villain because villains are easier to understand than family. But the voice on the phone was the same voice that had sung silly songs to my babies, the same voice that had driven 3 hours to fix my porch steps because he said no sister of his was going to trip on rotten wood. "Tell me what happened," I said, "and do not protect me with vague words. I am 71 years old. I can handle the truth." He swallowed audibly. "Your mother was young," he said. "She was scared. Everyone was scared. And then you came along, and the only thing anyone could think about was making sure you had a normal life. Charles was a good man, Linda. He loved you. He wanted you." The mention of my father made my tears spill over. "I know he did," I said. "That is the only thing I know for sure right now." Robert's voice softened, and for a moment he sounded like my brother again, like he wanted to reach through the phone and put a hand on my shoulder. "You were never unwanted," he said. "Never. Do you hear me? You were loved from day one." "But yes," he added, and the words seemed to hurt him to say, "the biology is what the test is picking up. And I have lived with that shame and that fear my whole life." My hands clenched into fists. "So you knew?" I said. "All these years, you knew, and you let me call you my brother." "I did not let you," he said quickly, almost desperate. "I begged your mother to tell you when you were grown. I begged her more than once. But she could not. She would cry and say it would destroy you. And then she would say we were past it, that we had already built a family, and we should not burn it down." I stared at the table, at the crumbs from the toast I could not finish. "And what did you want?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and pain. "For me to find out at 71 from a website." Robert did not answer for a moment. Then he whispered, "No. I wanted you to never have to carry it. I wanted to carry it for you." My throat tightened so hard it felt like I could not breathe. "But now I am carrying it anyway," I said. "So keep talking, Robert. I need to understand how my life got built on a lie, and I need to hear you say the part you have been avoiding." Robert's breathing sounded heavy, like he had put the phone on speaker and sat down somewhere he did not want to be. When he spoke again, his voice was low, careful, as if each word had sharp edges. "All right," he said. "I will tell you what I can, the way it should have been told a long time ago. Not with excuses. Not with pretty language. Just the truth as I remember it." I gripped the phone with both hands. "Go," I said. He paused, then began. "Back then, Our house was not like the stories you tell. The grandkids, he said. People see old photos and think everything was simple and wholesome. But there were problems. There was pressure. There was a lot of fear about what people would say, what the church would say, what the neighbors would say. Your mother was young, and she wanted out. She wanted to feel grown. She wanted to feel loved. My stomach turned. And you? I said, my voice tight. Where do you fit in that? He swallowed. I was older than her, he admitted. And I was wrong. I crossed a line that should never be crossed. I have lived with that shame every day since. The words hit like a weight. He did not say more than that, and he did not need to. I could feel my whole body trembling, anger and grief tangling together until I could not tell which one was stronger. So everyone knew, I said. Everyone in that house knew something was wrong. The adults knew enough, he replied, and the regret in his voice sounded real. They knew there was trouble. They knew your mother was pregnant and terrified. They knew if the truth came out, it would destroy her, and it would destroy me, and it would destroy the family name in that small town. They did not handle it the right way. They handled it the way scared people handle things. They tried to bury it. I stared at the birth certificate on the table as if it might suddenly rearrange itself into a different story. And Charles, I asked, my voice cracking, how did my father become part of this? Robert exhaled slowly. Charles loved your mother, he said. He was not a perfect man, but he was decent. When he found out she was pregnant, he made a choice. He said, I will marry her. I will raise the baby. I will put my name on the papers. I will give this child a life where she is not whispered about. He did not do it for praise. He did it because he believed it was the right thing to do. Tears rolled down my face again, hot and unstoppable. He chose me, I whispered. Yes, Robert said firmly. He chose you. And he meant it. He was your father, Linda, in every way that matters in the living of a life. The love I felt for Charles did not go away. It became sharper, more painful, like gratitude mixed with mourning. Then why did you stay? I demanded, my voice rising. Why did you stay close to me? Always hovering, always protecting, always calling me kiddo like I was something fragile. Robert was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice sounded like it was breaking in places he could not control. Because I could not fix what I did, he said. But I could try to make sure nothing else harmed you. I watched you grow up, and I told myself, every year, that you deserved the best version of me I could give you. I tried to be the brother you thought I was. I tried to be someone you could trust. My hands clenched again. But you were also hiding, I said. You were hiding the truth from me. Yes, he admitted. And I hated myself for it. There were nights I wanted to call you and tell you everything. But then I would imagine your voice, your face, the way you would look at me, and I could not do it. And your mother, he added, your mother begged me not to. She said it would kill her to see you hate her. She said she would rather die with the secret than live through your pain. I swallowed hard. She did die with it, I said. So now I am the one living through it. Robert did not argue. I know, he whispered. I am sorry. The apology did not soothe me. Not yet. It might never. But it did something else. It made the moment real. It made the story stop being theory and become something with a human voice behind it. Tell me about my birth, I said, because my mind needed facts like it needed air. Was I born where the papers say I was born? Yes, Robert answered. You were born at that hospital. Charles was there. He held you. He cried. Your mother was exhausted and scared and relieved all at once. They registered you as his. And after that, the family agreed on a rule. No one would ever speak of the past again. I stared at my own hands. And you just lived with it, I said. All of you lived with it. We lived with it, Robert said, voice rough. But you lived without knowing, and that was the deal they made. They thought ignorance would be mercy. I let out a bitter laugh that sounded nothing like me. Ignorance is not mercy, I said. It is a delayed explosion. Robert was quiet. Then he said something that made my chest tighten in a different way. Linda, he said, if you need to never speak to me again, I will accept it. I will not fight you. I will not guilt you. I will not pretend you owe me anything. I just want you to know one thing. I never stopped loving you the way a brother should love his sister. I know what I did was wrong. I know it stained everything. But the love I tried to give you after that was real. My throat ached. I could not give him forgiveness. I could not give him comfort. All I could give, in that moment, was the truth of my own confusion. I do not know who I am right now, I said softly. I do not know what to call you in my head. I do not know how to hold the memories I love and the facts I hate in the same hands. Robert's voice broke completely on the next words. Then take time, he said, and tell me what you need. Because this time, I will not decide for you. This time, you get to decide. When I finally ended the call, my hand stayed pressed to my ear as if the warmth of his voice had burned there. The kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator humming, steady and indifferent. I looked at the papers spread across the table, the birth certificate, the baby book, the photos, and I realized none of them could tell me what to do next. They could only tell me what had been done. I sat for a long time without moving, like my body had turned into furniture. Then my phone buzzed with a text from my daughter, Emily. Good morning, Mom. Are you free later? The kids want to stop by. My eyes locked on the word Mom. It felt solid and true, like a rope thrown to someone drowning. I typed back, yes. Come by after lunch. I need to talk to you. My fingers shook so much that it took me 3 tries to spell talk correctly. After I sent it, I stared at the message thread and felt the panic rise again. Once I told Emily, the truth would stop being contained inside my kitchen. It would move into the family like wind through an open door. I tried to clean, tried to make the house look normal, because I did not know what else to do with my hands. I wiped the counter that was already clean. I folded a throw blanket twice. I made a pot of soup and forgot to turn the burner down, then stood there watching it, as if it were a TV show I could not change. Around 1 o'clock, Emily's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window, seeing her step out with her usual brisk energy, her hair in a ponytail, her purse on her shoulder, my 2 grandkids tumbling out behind her with sneakers and laughter. Their normal happiness hit me like a wave. For a second, I almost called out, "Do not come in. Do not bring your bright life into my broken story." But they were already at the door. Emily hugged me, and I held her too long. She pulled back, studying my face. "Mom," she said, voice instantly serious. "What is going on?" I swallowed hard. "Can you sit?" I asked. "Just you. I need a minute with you before the kids run everywhere." Emily herded them toward the living room with a handful of snacks, then came back to the kitchen table. She sat, hands folded, eyes sharp. She had my father Charles's steady gaze, and in that moment it made me want to cry again. I slid my phone across the table, already open to the DNA results. I did not know how to ease into it. There is no gentle ramp into a cliff. "I took a DNA test," I said. "Actually, I took 2. And they both say the same thing." Emily leaned forward, squinting at the screen. I watched her face change as she read, confusion first, then disbelief, then a kind of stunned stillness. "This says Uncle Robert is your biological parent," she whispered. "That cannot be right." "I thought the same," I said. I tested again. "It is right." Emily looked up at me, her eyes glossy. "So Grandpa," she began, and her voice cracked. "Grandpa Charles was not." She could not finish the sentence. "Not biologically," I said softly. "But he was my dad. He raised me. He loved me. That part does not change." Emily's breathing got shallow. "Did you talk to Uncle Robert?" she asked. I nodded once. "This morning." I did not want to repeat Robert's words, but I had to give her enough truth to ground her. "Aunt Margaret confirmed it," I said. "And Robert admitted the biology. He said Grandpa Charles chose me anyway." Emily put a hand to her mouth and stared at the table like the wood grain might offer an answer. "Mom," she said, "why did no one tell you?" "Because they thought silence was mercy," I replied. My voice sounded older than 71. "They thought if I did not know, I would be safe. But now I feel like I am holding 2 versions of my life, and they do not fit together." Emily reached across and grabbed my hand. Her grip was firm, like she was anchoring me. "You are still you," she said, and her voice carried the kind of certainty I needed. "You are still my mother. Grandpa Charles is still the man I remember, the man who adored you, who adored us. Nothing changes that." I nodded, but the ache remained. "I do not know what to do about Robert," I admitted. "He has been my brother for 71 years. Now my brain cannot stop relabeling him. Every memory feels contaminated." Emily's jaw tightened. "You do not owe him forgiveness," she said. "You do not owe anyone comfort right now. You owe yourself care." I exhaled shakily. The kids laughed in the next room, the sound bright and careless. It reminded me that this truth was not only mine. It belonged to them too, whether I wanted it to or not. "I have not told them anything," I said. "Not yet." Emily nodded, eyes wet but steady. We will be careful, she said. We will do this the right way, the way it should have been done from the beginning. You do not have to carry it alone. I squeezed her hand and felt, for the first time since that email arrived, a small shift inside me. The truth had shattered my past, but it did not have to steal my future. I looked at Emily and whispered, I think I need help. Like real help. Someone trained to untangle this. Emily nodded immediately. Then we find you someone, she said. Today? Not next week. Today. And in that moment, with my daughter's hand in mine and my grandkids' laughter floating through the house, I finally believed one thing with absolute clarity. The secret was not my identity, but the silence that had wrapped around it for generations, and I was not going to let silence lead the rest of my life. Emily did not leave that afternoon until she had my phone in her hand and a short list on a yellow notepad like she was organizing a family vacation instead of a crisis. She searched for counselors near me, not the kind that felt clinical and cold, but someone who worked with late-life identity shocks, family secrets, grief, and trauma. Even seeing those words typed out made my stomach tighten, because trauma was something I associated with other people, other stories, the kind you hear on the news and shake your head about. But then I looked at my own hands, still trembling hours after the call with Robert, and I understood that my body had been living in shock since that email arrived. By late afternoon, Emily had an appointment set for the next morning with a licensed therapist about 15 miles away. She offered to drive me, and I said yes without pride, because pride is useless when your world has shifted. After she left with the kids, the house felt larger and emptier, like every room had more space for thoughts to echo. Robert called that evening. I stared at his name on the screen until it stopped ringing. A minute later, a text came through. Linda, I am here. No pressure. Just here. I read it 3 times. My first instinct was rage, because just here sounded like he still believed he could stand nearby and somehow steady the ground he had helped crack. My second instinct was grief, because the truth is, he had always been there. And now that constancy felt like both comfort and poison. I did not respond. I needed one night where my phone did not decide my emotions for me. The next morning, Emily picked me up at 9, and I climbed into her car with my purse, my glasses, and a folder of documents like I was going to court. The drive was quiet at first. Then, Emily asked softly, "Do you want to talk, or do you want silence?" I stared out the window at familiar streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, and I said, "Silence, please." I did not have the energy to narrate my own life to my own child. The therapist's office was in a small building with a sign that looked too cheerful for what I carried inside. In the waiting room, there were magazines and a bowl of mints and a framed quote about healing. I wanted to laugh at how gentle the world tried to be in places where people showed up broken. When I finally sat across from the therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, she asked me to start wherever I wanted. So I started with the only thing that felt solid. "My name is Linda Harper," I said. "I am 71, and I found out my brother is my biological parent." Saying it out loud to a stranger made my throat ache, but it also made the truth stop spinning in my head like a loose wheel. The therapist did not flinch. She nodded slowly, like she had met this kind of earthquake before. "That is an enormous discovery," she said. "How are you feeling in your body right now?" I blinked at the question. No one had asked me that. "Tight," I admitted. "Like my chest is a fist." She guided me through breathing, through grounding, through noticing that I was safe in a chair in a quiet room, even if my history did not feel safe. Then she asked me about Charles, the man I called Dad, and what it meant to love someone who was not biologically connected to you. I told her about him teaching me to drive and how he used to cut my sandwiches into triangles when I was sick. I cried when I said, "He chose me," because that choice suddenly felt like the brightest light in the ugliest part of the story. The therapist listened, then asked the hardest question in the gentlest way. "What do you need now, Linda?" Not what Robert needed, not what my mother would have wanted, not what the family image demanded. What I needed. The answer surprised me because it was simple. "I need to keep my memories," I said. "I need to keep the good parts of my life, without feeling like they were all fake." She nodded. "Your memories are real," she said. "The love you received was real. The secrecy was also real. Both can exist. Healing often looks like learning to hold 2 truths at once." On the way out, Emily squeezed my shoulder. "How was it?" she asked. I took a slow breath and said, It was the first place where the truth did not feel like it was trying to kill me. That afternoon, back in my kitchen, I finally texted Robert one sentence. I am getting help. I need space. Do not contact my children. I will reach out when I can. He replied within minutes. I understand. I am sorry. I will respect that. I stared at his response and felt something shift again, small but important. For the first time, I was setting the rules. Not the secret. Not the fear. Not the past. Me. And even though nothing about my origin made sense yet, I could feel the outline of a future where the truth did not control every breath I took. In the weeks that followed, I learned that space is not emptiness, it is oxygen. I kept my routine on purpose. I watered my plants every Sunday. I walked 2 miles around the neighborhood when the weather allowed, counting mailboxes and breathing like the therapist taught me when my chest tightened. I went through my photo albums again, but this time I did not look for hidden meanings in every smile. I looked for what was true. Charles standing behind me at my high school graduation, beaming like I had invented the sun. My mother Evelyn holding my newborn son with tears in her eyes. Robert at my wedding reception, dancing awkwardly, laughing because he never knew what to do with his hands. Those moments still happened. They still shaped me. The secret did not erase them. It only changed the frame around them. In therapy, I stopped asking the question that had tortured me at the beginning. Who am I if my story is wrong? I started asking a different question. Who am I now that I know? The answer arrived slowly, like dawn. I am Linda. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am the daughter of the man who raised me and chose me with his whole heart. I am also a person whose origin contains painful truth that I did not choose. Both are real. Both belong to my life, but neither gets to own all of me. Emily and I agreed on boundaries for our family. My children would know the essentials, carefully and honestly, without turning it into a spectacle. My grandchildren would not be told until they were older, and only if it became necessary for medical reasons or because they asked directly. I refused to let the next generation inherit the same kind of silence that poisoned ours, but I also refused to hand children a burden they could not carry. I chose balance, not drama. Robert respected my request for space. Some days that felt like relief. Other days it felt like grief, because the absence of his Sunday calls left a quiet ache. Eventually, after more sessions and more nights of thinking, I wrote him a letter. I did not send forgiveness wrapped in pretty ribbon. I sent truth. I told him that I could not untangle 71 years in a few weeks. I told him I remembered the good he had done, and I was not going to pretend it never mattered. I told him I would never call him Dad, because Charles earned that word with every day he lived. I told him that what happened was wrong, and I would not minimize it, even if the past wanted to hide. And then I told him one more thing, the hardest thing to admit. I did not know yet what our relationship could be, but I was willing, in time, to decide for myself what contact looked like, not out of guilt, not out of fear, but out of what protected my peace. When I sealed the envelope, my hands did not shake. I visited Charles's grave the next weekend with a small bouquet of white flowers. I sat on the bench nearby and talked to him like I always had, telling him about Emily, about the kids, about the garden. Then I told him the truth I had learned. I expected to feel betrayal. Instead, I felt something warmer and steadier, gratitude. Because even with all the confusion, one thing stood out like a lighthouse. He gave me a life where I was loved openly. If the secret was meant to protect me, his love actually did. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." As I walked back to my car, I realized something I never thought I would say. The DNA test did not steal my identity. It exposed a lie, yes, but it also revealed what was real underneath it. And what was real, what still holds, is the life I built, the family I raised, and the truth I will no longer run from. Follow a 71-year-old grandmother as a simple DNA test detonates decades of family secrets and forces her to question every memory she trusted. What begins as a curiosity about ancestry turns into a relentless search through documents, photographs, and buried family history when the results point to a shocking biological link with the man she has always known as her older brother. As the elderly aunt who guarded the past finally speaks, more family secrets surface, revealing how fear, reputation, and silence shaped an entire household. The older brother must confront what he has avoided for a lifetime. while the grandmother struggles to separate love, identity, and truth without losing the father who raised her in every way that mattered. Through hard conversations, boundaries, and healing, she learns how family secrets can fracture generations, and how choosing clarity over silence can protect the family she built. This emotional, true-to-life drama explores trust, belonging, and the cost of family secrets, ending with a powerful reminder that even when the past changes, a life of love and resilience can remain real beyond family secrets. Character 1. 71-year-old white woman. Front-facing head and shoulders portrait. Natural skin texture and wrinkles. Wearing a simple navy cardigan over a white blouse. Soft daylight. Neutral background. No cartoon, no cartoon. No CGI. No illustration. GPT Hey Tao Prompt 42 Chi Mo Ta Bang Chu Kong Sin Hin. Character 2. 75-year-old white man. Front-facing portrait. Kind face. Short gray hair. Flannel shirt. No cartoon, no cartoon. No CGI. No illustration.